Pop culture! And I ain't talking about no soda pop culture, though early onset diabetes is a serious issue plaguing our society. Today I am talking about pop culture references in Dragon Ball. Why was I talking about diabetes just now? Akira Toriyama is a major cinephile, and despite admitting to not reading a lot of manga or watching a lot of anime, has created one of the biggest and most prolific Japanese franchises and IPs ever. And you better believe there are tons of references to all the things Akira Toriyama loves and enjoys from the West to the East. And for your viewing pleasure, I've spent my limited time on this planet looking for the 15 best pop culture Easter eggs in the entire Dragon Ball series. Let's begin. To begin this list, let's take a look at one I was unsure of for quite some time. You see, some speculated that the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, or Room of Spirit and Time, might have been a reference to the White Void area from the film THX-1138. Catchy titles aside, the movie is a 1971 sci-fi fantasy film set in a dystopian future, written, edited, and directed by George Lucas before he created the Star Wars franchise, which Akira Toriyama was a huge fan of, along with the rest of the world. Despite the White Void area looking strikingly similar to the Hyperbolic Time Chamber in design, I still wasn't convinced, until I heard this.
The air's getting thinner. The pressure's getting greater.
This quote takes place as two of the prisoners are walking further and further out into the ether of the void. And as many Dragon Ball fans might remember, these are similar attributes associated with the Hyperbolic Time Chamber. Jumping from an incredibly obscure film from the 70s to a massively popular one from the 50s, we find ourselves with Disney's Cinderella. It's a known fact that while Akira Toriyama loved his sci-fi and his Asian martial arts films, he also enjoyed Disney from time to time. And anyone who has seen Cinderella knows this song.
Bibbidi bobbidi boo.
Those three words sound familiar? Bobbidi is the shriveled up prune that tries to awaken Majin Buu, and Bibbidi is Bobbidi's father. Man, Akira Toriyama sure does love his strange naming conventions. But from there, let's jump into some of Akira Toriyama's bigger passions, martial arts films. Did you know that Akira Toriyama and Jackie Chan were actually fans of one another? Toriyama was such a big fan of these martial arts films that in the first tournament arc of the original Dragon Ball, Master Roshi disguises himself as a character called Jackie Chan. Obviously a name derived from Jackie Chan, with his design being inspired by the late Bruce Lee. So, from the early stages of Dragon Ball, let's jump to the beginning of Dragon Ball Z's Saiyan Saga. And it just so happens this section of the story has quite a few references and parallels to the movie Superman 2. A child sent to Earth from a planet destined for destruction, raised in a simple, humble setting, eventually fighting in defense of Earth against a superior ranked individual from his home planet. I mean, it's clear here that Vegeta is Zod. Minor side note, Dr. Slump, another Akira Toriyama manga, had a character called Superman, which was obviously inspired by Superman, both in name and design. Fun fact though, the name Superman translates to Sour Man in English. Skipping forward from the Saiyan Saga to the Namek Saga, there are a few references to Ridley Scott's horror masterpiece, Alien, the most obvious of which being Frieza's third form. This is clearly a homage to the Xenomorph from the Alien franchise. Everyone knows this one. I think I even know people who haven't even seen Dragon Ball that know about this one. But it's still a good reference. However, a less obvious reference might be seen when looking at Frieza's brother, Cooler. Yes, despite not being involved with the film's story or anything like that, Akira Toriyama did design Cooler and his subsequent forms. And his final form's design, if you look closely, could potentially be a homage to the Predator franchise. There are some striking similarities here. This would complement his brother's Xenomorph reference nicely, if it is true. Sticking with the Namek Saga, the time spent on the trip to Namek for Bulma, Gohan, and Krillin is by no means a favorite part of the story for anyone. Anyone that I know anyway. The only portion of this section of the story that people enjoy is the Bulma half-nude scenes. And despite this section being supremely uninteresting, it also bears a striking resemblance to the final scene of the Alien movie, where Ripley is found wearing a rather similar outfit. Seems like Bulma was a fan. And while we're on the topic of this skimpy outfit, it's not the only time Dragon Ball made this very reference to the character Ripley. Nope. In fact, it was a reference much earlier on the 17th episode of Dragon Ball. We can clearly see Launch wearing the same garments. I think the Bulma one is more convincing, seeing as they are also in space. Oh well. Who here likes Power Rangers? Almost everyone at some stage watched or enjoyed some Power Rangers. Well, these Power Rangers are actually taken from or inspired by a Japanese property called Super Sentai, in which a lot of the early footage of the Power Rangers while in their power suits were the original Japanese recordings and actors fighting inside. I can't believe you would lie to me, Billy! Tangents aside, Akira Toriyama was also a big fan of these larger-than-life character groups. So much so, he managed to write into the story flamboyant groups like the Ginyu Force and more recently Universe 11's Pride Troopers. Sticking to the theme of arcs being references to popular movie franchises, many aspects of the Android saga are inspired or directly referencing the Terminator franchise from the 80s and 90s. With Terminator 2 having been an enormous hit around the world during the time the Android saga was being written and produced, it stands to reason why it might have influenced Akira Toriyama. For God's sake, Trunks' design is based off of John Connor. Look at that hair! And I don't think I need to point out that Android 16 looks strikingly similar to a certain Austrian film star. For now, let's take a break from the 80s and 90s and jump right back up to the modern day with Dragon Ball Super. In 2017, two characters were introduced to the world, representing Universe 11 as its God of Destruction and its angel comes Belmont and Margarita. Immediately, it should be evident that both are references to the Joker and Harley Quinn from the DC Batman series. Sticking with the modern incarnation, let's take a look at one of the more divisive characters to be introduced to the series, Kale. Kale herself is a reference to an older Dragon Ball character called Broly, who actually got his own canon appearance this year. However, that isn't why Kale has made her way onto this list. It is in fact her reference to the first Avengers film. Kale in her hulking muscular form while smashing Goku around is a direct reference to the Hulk and Loki scene where he gets... yeah. Flashing backwards from something new to something old once again, we find ourselves on chapter 71 of the manga. Krillin and Launch are after returning to Master Roshi's home with some groceries. All seems innocent and normal until you realize one thing. The bag reads Super Mario, which is obviously a reference to the Super Mario video game.
It's me, Mario!
Oh, here's a fun one. Did you know that King Kai's monkey Bubbles is named after a celebrity of sorts? Or at least he was a celebrity in the 80s. A celebrity pet. A pet that once belonged to the late Michael Jackson. On top of leading one of the most eccentric lives perhaps ever, owning his own theme park and zoo on his own property, he also was the proud owner of a chimp that went by the name of Bubbles. And finally, our last one. Perhaps the most obscure reference in all of Dragon Ball. Literally a blink and you miss it moment, and boy, is this one nerdy. At the 16-minute mark during Dragon Ball Z episode 22, you might notice a news helicopter. Nothing special about it really, it doesn't even make a reappearance as it is later destroyed by Nappa. What is special about it, however, is that serial number on the side of the aircraft. Throw that code into Google and you find that it is a reference to Star Trek. Specifically, NCC 1701A is a reference to a shuttlecraft from the Enterprise A. I've never seen Star Trek, but there it is. These were my favorite pop culture references in Dragon Ball. Did I miss your favorite? If so, let me know down below in the comments section. And who knows, I might update this video with a sequel if I get enough suggestions. Don't forget to leave a like or dislike on this video, and if you would like to see more videos like this one, consider subscribing and turning that notification on if you want the subscription to work. Catch you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.